Cuban-Americans epitomize the American dream, stripped of their possessions, but not their dignity. Many sacrificed life and limb to start over in the United States and create a better life for them and their families. Almost 60 years ago, Democrat President John F. Kennedy abandoned Cuban dissidents at the Bay of Pigs, leading to decades of tense relations between the U.S. and Cuba. In 2009, Democrat President Barack Obama took steps to normalize relations with Cuba. Just 2 years later, the Cuban government began a series of economic reforms claiming to make life easier on everyday Cubans. In 2015, President Obama restored diplomatic ties with Cuba, opening up trade and travel. The Cuban people gradually saw their lives improved and were hopeful for a better future. But then, in 2017, Republican President Donald Trump reversed some of the Obama administration's policies towards Cuba. However, Trump left open select business interests, including direct flights from the U.S., cruise ship travel, and hotel ventures. Interests that benefited Donald Trump's friends. Almost half a century of failed U.S. policy towards Cuba got worse under Donald Trump. Trump says that Cuban-Americans should not vote for Joe Biden because Biden is a socialist sympathizer. But how does Donald Trump compare to Fidel Castro? Let's check the facts. In Cuba, it's all in the family. The Castro family still runs Cuba and benefits financially from Cuba's status quo while citizens suffer. For Donald Trump, he believes in family, but not family values. Trump put unqualified relatives in positions of power, hurting the American people. His family benefits financially and professionally. All taxpayers suffer. And in the case of COVID, some paid the ultimate price for this incompetence. The Cuban government is hostile to the free press. They heavily censor or outright control the media in Cuba. So does Donald Trump. Trump questions the legitimacy of news media, labeling them as fake news and enemy of the people. Trump has also attempted to regulate social media platforms that he says treat him unfairly. Fidel Castro was a hypocrite. The Cuban government party members lived very differently than the average Cuban, with more food, better housing, healthcare, etc. Donald Trump may talk a good game, but Trump's economic policies favor wealthy individuals like him and influential corporate donors while hurting working-class Americans. And Donald Trump doesn't respect the rule of law. Trump also pardons his convicted friends and interferes with the U.S. judicial branch on behalf of his cronies. Trump and friends live by a different set of rules than the rest of America. Cuba is militaristic. Cuba's military acts as the police against its citizenry, curtailing fundamental human rights, freedom of expression, and assembly. Trump is militaristic as well. Trump sent federal troops against protesters in D.C., Portland, and other cities, even when the protests were peaceful, or the local government asked him not to. At protests in Portland, federal troops in unmarked vans detained and kidnapped U.S. citizens without explanation or cause. This is more like Cuba, Russia, or China, not the USA. There's a brain drain in Cuba. Talented people leave Cuba as quickly as possible. Cuba's government is full of loyal but unqualified party members. There's a brain drain in Washington as well. Trump's administration has recorded record turnover, with qualified civil servants leaving critical positions that are then filled with unqualified friends of Trump's. These incompetent cronies then work to weaken or dismantle the very entity they are tasked with overseeing, like the U.S. Postal Service, the Environmental Protection Agency, and more. Under Fidel Castro's leadership, conspiracy theories and rampant paranoia abounded, turning friends against friends and family members against each other. Today in the U.S., under Trump, conspiracy theories have reached an all-time high. Trump has pushed and peddled unfounded conspiracies that divide and polarize the U.S. to a degree not seen since the Civil War. In the U.S., friends have also turned on friends, family members against each other. When it comes to extremes, Joe Biden is as moderate as they come, but Castro was an extreme leftist, and Trump is an extreme rightist. Castro and Trump are actually closer together ideologically than Biden with either of them. Joe Biden says he'd reverse the failed Trump policies towards Cuba.
I've tried to reverse the failed Trump policies and inflicted harm on Cubans and their families. It's done nothing to advance democracy and human rights. On the contrary, the crackdown on Cubans by the regime has gotten worse under Trump, not better. And especially Cuban-Americans, they're the best ambassadors for freedom in Cuba. Like, when I was vice president, we demanded the release of all prisoners and continue to be an advocate for human rights in Cuba. My plan, I pursue a policy advancing interest and empowering the Cuban people to freely determine their own outcome, their own future. And by the way, I believe that no government should get away with, in the way of Americans, especially Cuban-Americans, working to help their families and friends in Cuba. I'll reverse the recent decision by Trump to limit the remittances to the Cuban family.
In 4 years, Donald Trump has not helped the Cuban people or Cuban-Americans. He has hurt them. Donald Trump does not respect the rule of law, family values, or Cuban-Americans' historic struggles. Joe Biden respects rule of law, family values, and understands the Cuban-American experience. Donald Trump is not a leader. He is a proven divider. Trump doesn't understand struggle. He's been wealthy since childhood. Trump's policies hurt the Cuban people while entrenching the Cuban regime. Trump doesn't respect democracy, the law, or family values. 4 more years of Trump means 4 more years of suffering for Cubans and Americans. Joe Biden is not a socialist. He is a moderate. Joe says Cuban-Americans are the best ambassadors for freedom in Cuba. Joe has working-class American roots. He understands struggle. Joe is a good man and a unifier. He respects democracy, the law, and family values. Joe is what this country and Cuban-Americans need now. Donald Trump has divided Cuban friends and families for years. Don't you think we've had enough chaos and division? Isn't it time for a unifier, not a divider? Isn't it time for a moderate like Joe Biden?